Welcome to the Tech Founders Podcast, where we talk to founders to learn about their experience, gain inspiration, and unearth practical advice for navigating the tech startup landscape. I'm your host, Marcus Pappin. Today, I'm talking to Ayush Gupta, the founder of Genloop. The aim of Genloop is that each enterprise company owns their intelligence. This is difficult for enterprises to accomplish today, as it requires significant dev effort, as well as companies being on top of the latest AI technologies. Genloop is creating AI agents and workflows that automate this process and allows enterprises to upgrade to their own private LLMs in a single line of code. I'm super excited today to talk to Ayush, as him and his team at Genloop are at the forefront of AI technology, and it'll be interesting to learn how they are leveraging private LLMs to solve enterprise-level problems. So welcome, Ayush.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you to you and your audience for having us here, and a pleasure being here.
I'm super excited to chat with you. So let's go
Likewise.
back a little bit. And how did you get started working with AI and engineering in general?
Sure. So I did my undergrad from India and completed in 2017. And at that time, I used to work with the robotics a lot, and that had its own genesis, how I got interested in robotics. But I came to Stanford thinking I'll do robotics and mechatronics. But when I entered, even robotics was being done by AI. So, and that was my first, stint with AI, like trying to do robotics with it. And as I went deeper into it, I did computer vision to solve a lot of problems. Then NLP happened, and thankfully I was at Stanford, so there was a lot of opportunity and a lot of activity happening around AI. So got a chance to try out multiple things, and eventually, like found my love and really good intuition in that system, and that good feedback mechanism just triggered. I was doing stuff that I was getting rewards with, so it just kind of created that entire snowball effect, and I ended up being a full-time AI person.
Awesome. So kind of you weren't expecting it at first and just kind of landed on your lap and you ran with it.
Yes, yes, I'm a big flow person, so I just went with the flow. AI pulled me into it.
That's awesome. So how did you go then from studying it at Stanford? I saw you had experience at Apple and then another startup. So
Yeah.
how did you transition from learning about AI at school to eventually founding Genloop?
Sure, sure. So at Apple, I was part of the Apple AI/ML group, where a responsibility was to power search and discovery experiences for users coming to Apple Media products. So heavy into search, recommendation, and large-scale ML systems. And needless to say, we were handling queries like, on billions of user searches per day. So really had an exciting time there and lovely team, lovely work that they're doing. But close to the GPT time, right? Like when ChatGPT was just coming up, like I just wanted to try something of my own. There was an inflection point I could see for myself as well. There was time that I could take that risk and just, there was this desire in me to start something. I started creating Gen AI applications for enterprises, to just test the power of this technology and really firsthand. Um, and it is while building those applications for enterprises that I really had the deja vu moment for Genloop and started with it, because what I was seeing was that it was very cool to build POCs and MVPs on top of these closed general models like GPT-4. Uh, but they were not getting adopted by enterprises. And the reasons for many, like some were privacy. So enterprises really wanted the stack to come to the data rather than their data going out to a third party stack, even when um, there's so much confusion about how that data might get used to train. Um, and especially in compliance regulated industries that cannot share PII, they're very hesitant of sharing the data outside. And many enterprises, for that reason, operate on-prem itself. So the common voice was that, okay, the information security team for many companies was disallowing sending their enterprise level data to a third party. So privacy was one. Scale and price at scale was the other one. So, like when it just drops, like, 100 calls in a month or 200 calls in a month, the cost does not add up. But when we are talking in the enterprise scale that are processing 2.7 millions of documents, in a day, uh, You're looking at cost even with the latest, cheapest pricing at $100 million a year. And at that scale, renting intelligence stops making sense. So that is the time when it's like you should just buy your intelligence. You should just control your intelligence. And performance was the third biggest factor. It's a closed general model. It's like you have outsourced your work to a smart guy, and you give them the entire document how things have to be done. They'll reply with something, but still they'll have some mistakes because it's not completely onboarded to how you want to get things done. Um, it's you and you alone who knows how your data is set up, how your expectations are set up. It's basically like an employee who comes to you, but then you have to train and onboard them to get things done. So that practice to perfection loop that happens with the employee has not happened with these closed general systems. So we're seeing a lot of failure modes happening, no systematic way to incorporate feedback, limits of the stateless system, limits of prompt engineering, where the performance was really, really not at the enterprise level. So it became clear that the future is going to be privately owned intelligences, or every enterprise having its own uh, LLM or intelligence unit for want of more cost, efficiency, more control, and better performance. And that is the bud for Genloop.
Mhm. So you can see how with ChatGPT, obviously the use cases are pretty universal. There's lots of
Yeah,
use cases for it for many different types of applications. So it seems
right.
like the benefit, I'm trying to summarize here, the benefit is that private LLMs are a lot more focused towards solving one specific problem for one company. Is that correct?
Right. So it's basically like you might have like that. That's how enterprises are actually. They have very specific problems that they're doing it at scale. And the beauty with fine-tuned LLMs is you are perfecting one LLM, or with new approaches, one adapter to be very good at one thing, and then you can have a bunch of adapters at your disposal to get the entire task done much more efficiently. So it's not like we are limiting the enterprise's intelligence to just one task, but whatever task they're doing, that can happen on top of these privately hosted, fine-tuned LLMs, or their domain adapted LLMs.
Mhm. Have you ran into any challenges? Obviously, this is a new technology overall. And I know a lot of companies are still learning about AI, especially if they're non-tech companies, they're not the most technical people. Sometimes
Right,
it could
right.
be a little red flag, like AI, what exactly could we do with this? And there's a lot to
Correct,
learn,
correct.
and it's amazing how it's constantly changing, but it can
Right,
also intimidate a lot of people who are not in that space. I've
right.
recently been explaining to my mom what ChatGPT is and AI, and it's been really interesting to see how this thing I work with every day, where some people
Uh,
just don't know. So, how have you found the adoption has been in these enterprise companies, and what sort of pushback or hurdles have you guys had to overcome in order to get this technology adopted in these larger companies?
Awesome. Um, so first of all, one of the best things is like ChatGPT was able to create that hype around AI and generative AI in general. So for big enterprises also, getting the meetings with the CXOs or the decision makers is not that big of a task. Um, the biggest challenge is, to be honest, it is such a new technology that even enterprises really don't know how to react to it many a times. Like what kind of indemnification they're looking at. What happens if someone sues Llama, for example, and says that, okay, you trained your model on so and so things. And then that indemnification flows to the enterprise as well. So there's this legal perspective of how to take the technology. Then there is definitely that educational factor or dimension, what to do with Gen AI. So in many enterprises, I think the entirety of the enterprises would know ChatGPT and would know Gen AI, but outside the Bay Area, it's more like what to do with Gen AI. So there has to be that consultative selling. There has to be that understanding of the use case. Like where you can actually use it. And for me myself, like where OpenAI makes complete sense for you, but where you should go for your private fine-tuned LLM. And if you are going, like where you should go with us, and not just go with, let's say, just a together API to call one of the open source models. So consultative selling is the second one. Kind of people are excited to try it. That's a positive, but they have to be guided on how to try it. Uh, and then third, such an evolving field, new things happening, every week. And like we have started a Tuesday paper thoughts. We try to bring up new research papers in this space every Tuesday, and that just helps us keep ourselves in discipline to keep on reading papers, but also helps, spread that information of how, new things are happening and what new things are happening that can be adopted. So that's the third challenge, like new things happening. Even we have to kind of see, like, where is that we can give the best value to our customers and which best technology that we can use to kind of deliver that value.
I like that. I was looking at your LinkedIn. I've noticed all the last few weeks you've been a lot more active in posting and educating people on that. So I think that's great because now I know I have a place to check in on the latest technologies and see
Yeah,
what's
thank
going
you.
on.
Yeah, thank you. And if you think that there's some other thing that we should cover, just let me know. I would be happy to kind of also have our team deep dive into that.
Will do. Have you found that certain industries are better candidates to adopt generative AI than others?
Uh, uh, I wouldn't say there are certain industries that qualify to be better candidates. For example, there are definitely those early adopters, and there are definitely those technologies that are relatively late in adopting companies that are or sectors that are late in adopting technology. So e-com, fintech, these are very, stuff with people who are exposed to technology or, have different SaaS companies working for them, are data ready, because they have the systems ready. So definitely makes them to be a good client at first. Um, but if you go deeper into healthcare, medtech, possibly, less data ready. And then if we go further down into real tech, prop tech, even less data ready. So it's not as such vertical focus. Like we'll find early adopters even in these verticals, but it's just like as a function of exposure. There are certain verticals that have, you know, that are more data ready and more exposed to technology.
Yeah. So when you got, yeah, I can see that as well. Actually, when you're looking at the tasks that you're trying to automate, it's really understanding the business, right? And understanding this company has this process going on. Can this technology, and then you guys are obviously the experts in that, where you can look at the different options available and kind of find the best tool for the job.
So in that case, like sometimes there are again multiple cycles, like where we catch the company. Sometimes it is just we want to do something with Gen AI, what to do. Sometimes it's like we have done this POC with Gen AI, we know we want to use this, but what is the best way to use it? So the first one, it's again, a little more, deep dive into their use case and then find out what exactly would make sense for them. And sometimes when they're just getting started, we even suggest like, okay, you just try it out with OpenAI and see whether you have PMF in this space or whether this is actually a settled use case that you're going for. If it is the other one, like, they've already have a POC and then we are discussing with them if fine-tuned LLMs make sense for them or not. That is a different kind of a discussion. So then we try to focus on basically solutioning with private fine-tuned LLMs. We don't try to kind of do GPT-based applications or build layers on top of GPT. There are many other companies that are well suited to do that. We try to create a niche into believing that you should own your intelligence, and we help you do that without any development hassle.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And as the founder, I assume you're at the front line with the clients talking about these solutions. And it's a very technical product, and it's very, as we talked about, very exciting, but very new. When you're going about communicating with your clients, the different options that exist in generative AI, and you're applying those to solutions, do you have a methodology of how you can communicate a deeply technical solution to somebody who is perhaps non-technical, and how do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, so I recently gave a talk at Google, why, when, and how to fine tune. And one of the good analogies that I used there, and that's not just to my credit, many people in the tech space have been speaking about it, is that LLMs are like high schoolers, and prompt engineering is giving like a short instruction to the high schooler to get some task done. fine tuning is like, having them sit and write practice tests and, evaluating them and correcting them and have them practice on it. And, full training or CPT or like continual pre-training or, training from scratch is more like, giving them a complete grade revamp or like, having them do the masters in that field. So that is one thing that helps communicate. What exactly LLMs are, on a uh, personifying that helps create a graphical picture and communicate, what exactly is capable of this technology. Um, and then it's more like what we do essentially is basically creating a scikit-learn kind interface for LLMs. Like you just worry about using the LLM like an API call, but below the operations are completely abstracted out from you because we are agents to complete that operation. So we, in some sense, like as a quippy way, we say that we use LLMs to create LLMs. So that is also able to project like what we are trying to do. So those are certain ways that we communicate.
I love it, love it. I like the analogies because it always just brings it down. It brings it back down, and anybody
Right.
could understand that.
Right. Right.
Awesome. So how I know Genloop is I believe you guys started about 6 months ago, correct?
Yes.
So
Yes.
you guys are new on the scene. Where do you see yourselves in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years going forward?
Yeah. Yeah. So technically, we are just 2, 3 months old. Like we just had
Okay.
this idea in our mind. We just, I personally was just writing some, seeing like, what can happen in this space. But technically, we started just 2, 3 months back, and I think this big green space that we have has been really helpful for us to pick that space and actually capture it because we already have uh, you know big paid commitments. We are starting work with some of the big enterprises in US. Yeah, very very happy for that. Sorry, what was the question that you had?
Yeah, where do you see, well, I gave a few
Oh, yeah.
timelines, but where do you see
Yeah.
yourself? Let's use a 3 year example. Where do you see yourself in 3 years at Genloop?
Right. So this space is such that first we have to theorize, where will Gen AI be in 3 years?
Yeah.
One plausibility is that it will be at Jarvis level capability, like the Iron Man's Jarvis. uh, you know. And
Yeah.
what I like to say is like there's not going to be just OpenAI's Jarvis or Anthropic's Jarvis. There's going to be like every company's Jarvis, because it has to get adapted to your workflows. It has to kind of integrate to your systems and know about your systems and expectations, know about how you want to get things done to actually get useful. And we want to be the tool that gives that Jarvis for every enterprise, or we want to be that platform, that onboarding platform of Jarvis, so that you can actually get things done with that. So if LLMs or if Gen AI is going towards that highly capability and highly intelligence, we are in that space of adapting that intelligence for you without any effort on your side.
That's awesome. And now we look to going forward and going back in your entrepreneurial journeys. Is there any advice that's stood out to you, or what have you learned starting your own companies that you advice you'd like to give to yourself 1, 2, 3 years ago?
Uh, so, let's say 3 years ago, me, I would just say start. Just let's do it. I'm a big fan of that quote. Just do it. Uh, like if you go too much into thinking why this, why not this, whether this makes sense or not. Like even if you give, 2 years of thesis level study into what idea you want to work on, chances are 99% of the times you'll not end up working with that. You'll just go in, realize, some challenges and adapt to doing something else altogether. So
Mhm.
3 years back to me, that is the advice. Just do it. 2 years back, the advice I would give is because I was pretty new with my startup journey. So I would focus mostly on the technology and the product. But what matters is the distribution, the use case, solving for the problem, understanding customers' problems. So that is the most important thing. Um, then this last year, me would be about, it was a learning opportunity for me. So, um, like there were, so I was part of that previous startup where we were just building applications, and one critical aspect for me was to follow my calling. Like I want to go deeper into this frontier technology rather than just build applications on top of it. So
Mm.
It's just follow your heart. Like I say, like, be naive. You cannot apply brain to all things. Sometimes, just letting yourself follow, what you feel inside helps a lot. And it might, if you just keep thinking about it, nothing might happen. But if you just go and do it, you'll conquer the world.
Yeah. That reminds me of this great quote by Naval Ravikant. And it says, find something that feels like play to you, but work to others. Because
Yeah,
when you enjoy what you're doing, you'll put in that extra time, you'll really dive in, and then you'll be 100% focused on
right.
when you're actually doing it, which just helps you retain the information that much better
Exactly.
and be more
Exactly.
creative in
Love
the
that quote.
process.
I
Yeah.
love that quote. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Ayush, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I
Likewise,
feel
Marcus.
like your product is, there's so much here. I feel like, again, in 6 months to a year, we could have a completely different conversation and on your
Right.
progress in that time.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm
Right.
super excited to see how you guys continue to develop and what solutions you guys continue to solve or come up with.
Perfect. Thank you, Marcus. Pleasure speaking with you. And like I wish you all the best and your audience all the best in their journeys as well.
What a great episode with Yush from Genloop. It was super interesting to get insight into the limitations of LLMs such as ChatGPT and why enterprise level companies are opting for private LLMs. Genloop will be a company to keep your eye on going forward, as with what they are doing, they could open up a whole new blue ocean. Make sure to follow Ayush on LinkedIn and Genloop at genloop.ai. I will be including links down in the description. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of the Tech Founders Podcast. And make sure to subscribe to listen to more interviews from founders doing amazing things. Thanks and have a great day.